Hi everyone, Air here, and today we're going to have an amazing episode on one of my favorite topics, polarity. With me, I have two guests, which rarely happens on the podcast, but this is the type of show that does definitely require a couple. With me, I have Andrew and Dawn, a couple that actually brings together the practices of polarity, masculine, feminine energy into real life. So you've heard me talk about this type of topic throughout my personal journey, as well as different types of approaches throughout the podcast. But now we actually get to see it into play. So welcome to the show, Andrew and Dawn.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yes, thank you. Excited to be here.
So right away, I want to get into what is a little bit of your story. So without giving me the whole kit and caboodle, why did you decide that polarity was going to be good for your type of relationship?
We stumbled into polarity. We didn't know the term polarity. We didn't know anything about the topics of masculine energy, feminine energy. We came across these things accidentally because we've been married for almost 13 years. We've been a couple for 15 years. And about 5 years ago, I asked Dawn to become my submissive. And it was really in the process of integrating dominant submissive dynamics into our relationship that we learned that we noticed there was something special kind of happening between us. There was something more than just what we thought dominance and submission was going to be. And so we learned this stuff more authentically and kind of figured out what the terms meant in practice. And our journey from there has been learning and growing together in how we can best show up for each other by being our authentic selves.
So if I heard you right, you all have been together for 15 years, but the dom and the sub part of your polarity wasn't into the last 5 years?
That's correct.
Ooh. So I have to ask Dawn here, the woman to woman, how was it like for the first 10 years of your life for that part of your marriage and part of your relationship?
So we've always had what I called a good relationship. Um, he would take the lead in certain parts that went well. But what now looking back, we both kind of understand is that I kind of led the relationship through unconscious emotional reactions. So we still had a lot of fun. To be honest, the sex life kind of dwindled from the beginning, where it was like novelty and hot and heavy, passionate fun, um, to not really understanding what happened to me because that desire was kind of fleeting. And so I always admired him and really respected him. And I didn't really understand that I was kind of in charge without the label. And so he kind of went on his journey without making me completely aware of it to try to really understand what was going on inside of him. And I started to experience a different man in our marriage. And, when he came to me and asked me, he did a wonderful job of explaining the ways that he already took the lead and why they went so well. And I couldn't argue with that. Like, I was like, yep, absolutely. Don't really understand what it will really be like to be a submissive, but I trust that you will show me and help me understand what you're actually seeking.
I feel like with different relationship dynamics, when people hear the words dominant, and submissive. They immediately go to as far extreme as possible, like total control. They go into topics of like BDSM, into different types of playmates, even like all the way. Versus polarity is a gradient. And you can find your relationship in any of these dynamics with still having a dominant and submission. How would you guys classify where you are on the gradient of polarity?
Well, our objective really is to see how good we can make this relationship between the two of us. That's the commitment that we make to each other, is how good can this really get? And how can I show up, each of us, in a way that maximizes the polarity in this relationship, that maximizes the intensity and the passion and the love and the desire. So where we are now, I would say we push that as far to the edges of intensity in the realm of polarity as we can go, while still remaining very deeply committed to each other and very deeply in love with each other.
One of the things I've noticed in my more recent relationships, and this is something I'm walking into my 30s that I've discovered has been way healthier than it was like when I was dating in my 20s. Because as a younger woman, we are taught by current modern values to go conquer the world, go build an empire, go have a business, a career, all of these very masculine energy, motives. And I found that I lost a lot of my softness. I lost a lot of my gentleness. I would be in relationships trying to be that powerhouse and make all these decisions for myself on a daily basis. And then when I would go to date somebody or be in a relationship with somebody, I couldn't let go of that control. Like I was almost fearful. How would that play out? Do you think you guys got a little bit lucky since you had the 10 years beforehand to kind of trust each other? And if that was the case, is there something you could suggest if you didn't have that 10 years? So a woman that was maybe in her 20 or 30s trying to date and find a good relationship? Or is that something you had to develop? Did you fully trust in the beginning, Don, whenever he was like, hey, this is going to be, the way to go? I know you said he gave examples, but what were you really feeling in those moments? And we can start with Andrew, maybe on the first part, and Don on the last.
Yeah, the thing that the 10 years of history really did for us was it let us know who each other was. We had a lot of history with each other, and we had a lot of trust and devotion for each other already there. But it also had its own set of challenges because we had all of these pre-built means of relating to each other, all of the ways that we had learned to relate to each other and to get along with each other. And those were programs that we've had to overcome, rather than a new relationship that might start this way where you can build the right patterns from the beginning. So it had its benefits, but it also has really had its challenges. And I would say the biggest challenges for us in shifting our relationship have come from having to unlearn the ways that we learned how to relate to each other in those first 10 years.
Yeah, and for me, in certain areas, it was easy to let him take the lead. In anything that had to do with my identities and my own ego, and the way I showed up in the world wasn't so easy. It's been through this dynamic that was added to our marriage that I've really come to know who I am and had to do the emotional work underneath to truly connect to that feminine essence and that softness, the gentleness, my sexuality for the whole nature that it is. And so I feel like it's been 5 years of work. But good work. It's not like hasn't always been easy, but when we are so committed to the love and devotion that we share, it helps to constantly give the 100% effort and take radical responsibility for the ways where I'm operating under my ego, where I think I'm right. And it's only that I think I'm right because it's the familiar territory that I've known for my whole life. It's just the belief systems that I've absorbed. And so as I experienced more and more of letting go, each thing, if you will, was its own example of freedom and liberation that I could experience. And then I just became hungry for more and more and more of that peace, the contentment of just being able to be present in every moment, which felt so different than, gosh, like at this point, I was alive for over 30 years of my life. So the life I live now is dramatically different than the way that I was showing up in life with this masculine driven, very responsible, self-disciplined woman.
One of the things I want to add, Dawn mentioned 100, 100. And this is something that's very important to us in our relationship, is that we don't look at this as a 50-50. This isn't a relationship that's based on anyone having to compromise anything and give up half. This is each of us showing up 100% and giving 100% of everything that we are to each other, of who we truly are. So this isn't a 50-50 thing, and it's not a 100-0, because that's what a lot of people think when they think about dominance and submission. They think it's the dominant taking 100% control and the submissive basically becoming a doormat. When in reality, when you do this with love, when you do this in a healthy, loving way, it is 100% of the masculine pull in polarity falls on me, and 100% of the feminine pull of polarity falls on Dawn. And we both have to show up all the way so that we can live a relationship that has no compromise, but really complete and total expression of both of our own authenticity.
I really appreciate you bringing up that point, because I would say that most people that I'm first introducing, I was like, have you considered having a polarity aspect to your relationship? Even in relationships that are the same sex. And people get really confused. And you really nailed it as far as, no, it's not about 50-50, which people immediately think of finances when they're like, she brings 50 to the table, you bring 50 to the table. But it's not about 100-0 either, because that was kind of my personal journey. I was like, oh my goodness, if I just, say I'm going to be in my feminine, I'm going to be soft, I'm going to be in flow and, be creative and be that supporting role, that I'm going to lose all control. And one of my bigger fears was, okay, I'm going to do this, but what about when I'm not with him? What happens? Can I take care of myself? Can I support, keep myself upright if I'm not in a relationship with someone? So these are some of the fears that I originally had until I actually got to experience it. I would love to almost go one at a time here, and whoever wants to start can start. But we do have masculine energy in us as well as feminine energy in us almost naturally, or maybe it's even society has given it to us and it feels like it's natural. So I want to see how it individually plays out. And then I kind of will go down that rabbit hole with each of you all. So who wants to start?
Well, I think what I'll do is kind of lay out for you what we've learned for ourselves about what what masculine energy in a man and in a woman really is. And then I'll let Dawn kind of add in whatever her experiences are here. But the way that I approach this is that, yes, we do all have both masculine and feminine energy, but it's how we express our energy and what our core essence really is that matters. Because the masculine energy in anyone is the giving, and the feminine energy is the receptive. Said another way, the masculine energy is order and structure, and the feminine energy is chaos and emotionality, so to speak. It's feeling. So it's the way that we express those energies that matter. So for me, as playing the masculine role, the dominant role in this relationship, I need to express my energy in a masculine flow, which means that I give in the way that I set order, that I set structure, that I move forward, that I create. And that is where my energy goes out from. But that has to be balanced with the receptive energy, or the feminine energy, which is for any masculine being. And I'm just going to say man, because that's how this plays out 90% of the time. And that's how it plays out for us. And I prefer just to speak in terms of our life and our experience, and people can apply this to their life however they choose. But for me as a man to express my masculine energy by the way that I set structure, that I create, that I chart a path forward in my life and in ours, that has to be balanced in order for it to be truly healthy, which means I need to be receptive in my heart. I need to be receptive to all of Dawn's emotions, to everything that she feels. I have to be completely and totally open emotionally to balance out the amount of strength and power and authority that I need to carry in order to carry the dominant role in this relationship. And for Dawn, and for any woman who is a feminine core being who wants to live in a feminine expression of their energy, she receives order, structure, commands, direction from me. And that balances out the polarity between my masculine and her feminine, where I am setting that order and she is receiving that order. Or in more specific things, I'm giving commands and she's following them. And so that is her receptive energy, her feminine. But then to balance that out, she gives from her heart an exact, perfect opposite balance to what I do. So whatever it is that she feels, all of her emotions, everything that is in her heart, every desire that she has, all of it is freely expressed so that I can receive that, because that's my information. That's how I know how she's receiving my leadership. If I command her to do something and she has an experience of that command that doesn't feel good, now she needs to express how she feels to me so that I can continue to calibrate how I lead with her experience of my leadership. And that's how we balance the complementary opposite nature, I guess, of the masculine expression and the feminine expression, where we can keep this energy moving. I lead, she follows, she feels, and I receive her feelings.
So in my side of that, I honestly don't get too caught up in worrying now about masculine versus feminine at the point where I'm at, because going back a little bit to the how good can this get in polarity, the farther I've gone, if we're looking at polarity kind of on a line, and one direction is the feminine, the other direction is the masculine, the further apart we step, we're stepping into our own essence more and more. And so the more that I've been able to let go, and I'm talking about letting go of those subtleties of control, of limiting myself in the world, limiting my own desires, limiting my own expression, limiting my sexuality, like in every way, because that's how I was showing up in the world. I was truly keeping myself small. And I was living in the masculine energy. And so as I've let go of that, I have, again, I said this before, connected to this softness and gentleness, but it's brought out more aliveness, this playful energy, and this eros that only perpetuates the deeper desire moment to moment between us. Like, I can't even explain that natural feel of, yeah, I guess the best way to say it is that desire. And it's not just about the desire to have sex, it's something bigger and all encompassing all the time for me. And so I guess the way that I have to use a little bit of masculine energy would be following his commands in the case of he writes my workouts for me. And so if he tells me go do this workout, I'm going to tap into that because that is a driving force to finish it, right? But I also get to have fun with it and experience the playful feminine. And so I bring the music and I dance when I'm doing it. And it's such a different experience, even being in somewhat of a masculine energy for me.
I'm really glad you shared that last part as well. When I've tried to put this into play, especially in those chapters that I still find myself single. I've been single for about a month right now. And I'm like, okay, I need a little bit of that structure, but how can I bring my feminine back into it? Because you can only attract your opposites. And if you're operating as a feminine woman, you're going to attract a very masculine man. So adding that kind of touch of like, okay, he's not with me at the moment. Now, you guys are clearly in a very loving, successful marriage. But in that exact moment, you are alone and you're like, okay, well, here's my structure. What can I do? That way I'm still, taking care of myself, but I'm in my own essence. I'm in my own energy. So with that, I'm curious, Valentine's Day is coming up. Can you guys share a little bit of what your plans are, Andrew, as far as how that plays out in a masculine and feminine type of relationship? Do you make all the plans or does she create something around your structure? How does that go?
Well, we have an interesting thing that happens for us around Valentine's Day because within 8 days, we have Valentine's Day, Dawn's birthday, and our anniversary.
Mm.
So that is what one of my friends years ago called marriage Super Bowl week. It's the big game, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But when it comes to anything like that, whatever the date nights are, whatever the plans we have for any time that we're going to be going out and having fun, yes, generally I make all of the plans. I tell Dawn what she needs to know. Sometimes I pick out the clothes for her to wear, or I tell her what type of place we're going to so she knows how to get, how she wants to dress herself and what time we need to leave. And then we go and she comes with me. Now, there are times with certain things we might plan where I will ask her to assist me with coming up with some options. If I'm busy or if I just want her input on something, I will ask her to research options and ideas for me. And she'll give those to me, and then I'll take that information, make the decision, and then we go forward with my plans. And then when it comes to how we play out, like, let's say, I'm not going to reveal all of our plans for Valentine's Day and birthday and anniversary right now, because I do like to keep some surprises for her. But
maybe a previous one instead.
But in general, whenever we go out to do anything, like a meal out at a restaurant, for example, we will get there. And because of the way that we live these dominant submissive dynamics, I pick out her food for her at the restaurant, for example. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm just going to pick something off the menu and she has to like it, whether she likes it or not. What it means is she doesn't have to make the decision. She doesn't have to make the decision about where we're going, about what the schedule is going to be, what time do we need to leave to make sure that we're there on time, making sure the reservation is confirmed. None of that is up to her. None of that is her responsibility. And when we get to a restaurant, if we're going out for Valentine's Day, I may just look at the menu, pick something out for her, ask the server, order it with the server, and then we just wait for the food to come. Sometimes I ask her to look at the menu and tell me what looks good to her. Again, I want her out of the decision-making energy and in the receptive energy so she can receive these things from me and I can give to her in this way. With the goal always being that it's a win-win, that I'm able to give to her in a way that feels good for her to receive.
Some of the men that I work with, whenever we're teaching polarity in a dynamic, have fallen in the trap or feel like they're not getting the other half of the win, that they're feeling like they just give, and they are exhausted even, or say that this relationship isn't of any value to them. Would you say that they are misunderstanding the concept, or are they operating in their feminine energy when they make those statements? What do you think could be causing that kind of turmoil for them, Andrew?
Their hearts are closed.
Ooh, okay, go further. Hearts are closed.
Again, like I said before, for a man who wants to be in the masculine expression in a relationship, yes, you're absolutely right. It is give. But it is not giving without receiving, because everything that I give to Dawn, that's an energy that moves from me to her. And the payback for that isn't that she goes and does the same amount of doing back to me to balance that out. She gives back to me through her heart, through her emotions, through how she feels, by giving me her love, her affection. And this is where most men have their work, and where I've had to do my most, like the most intense emotional work for myself, is opening up my heart so I can actually feel how much she loves me and how much she appreciates me, and how I get to connect to how she feels when I give to her. And I can receive that energy of love from her as the payback, or as the balance for how much I'm giving. Now, that requires that she's able to express herself, to feel gratitude, and to share with me the way that she feels in response to me taking the load off of her, so to speak. But unless I've opened up my heart and I'm able to receive love, it's going to feel like I'm just pouring myself out and not receiving anything back.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, the opening of the heart, it could have been closed from trauma and childhood. It could have been closed from maybe previous relationships, maybe a bad experience with some type of mother figure in their life, but it's translated into their essence, into their energy, and they're bringing that into this relationship. whether it's a brand new relationship or, a relationship that's been in for 10 years and we're transferring into a different dynamic.
Yeah, it's
As women, go ahead.
well, it's the ego trying to protect us from experiencing that same kind of pain. I mean, you're dead on right. It's all of these things that happened in the past that hurt because men are inherently sensitive. This is an extremely important thing for any guy who wants to explore polarities. He has to accept and value his own sensitivity. And that sensitivity is his receptive heart. So if he's been hurt, and every single man has been hurt by women, yes, but also by the feminine on a bigger scale, by the chaos and uncertainty and unpredictability of life. That is also an energy of the feminine. And every single man has been hurt in some way by the feminine. And so we go into relationships with these walls up, trying to avoid feeling that same pain again. And that's what causes a man to have his heart closed.
As a woman, if a man is giving this energy and it's a healthy energy, let's say it's not the closed energy, and she is able to express her emotions, let's say she's very self-aware, even a spiritual woman at heart, is there any situation you could think of, and this could go to Don, this could go to Andrew, as far as the answer goes, that you're like, okay, here's the man, he's giving his energy, he's doing his 100%. And this woman should be in her expressive state, her emotional, like creative flow. Is there any mismatch that could come up that would cause her not to be able to fully return? And again, I don't love the terminology here. Maybe there's a better way to say it, but it should just be in flow. Like, I feel like women are reflections of the energy that a male gives into a woman. Is there ever a case that you can think of that doesn't happen?
I really don't. Because if two people love each other enough to be in relationship with each other, and both of them are open to receiving each other, the man is open to receiving the woman's heart, the woman is open to receiving the man's leadership, and they can move energy between them in that way. The only thing that causes relationships to break down is when that energy gets blocked or stuck somewhere, when somebody either doesn't give or can't receive. But I've said this before, and this is a hill I would die on, that if you have two people who love each other, who are willing to embrace this way of loving, this way of giving and receiving, that any relationship can flourish. Any single relationship where there's love can continue to get better and more loving, more passionate, more sexually alive, year after year after year. And that's one of the many things that the reasons why we share what we do through our business and through what we do for a living, is because that's what has proven to be true for us. We're coming up on 15 years as a couple, and things have never been more loving, more passionate, more sexual. Everything about our relationship keeps getting better. And I believe that the only reason that ever stops, if there's two people who love each other, is because that energy and the ability to give and receive it has broken down somewhere.
I would just add that, in our past, there were times in our dynamic where he definitely was giving more to me than he was receiving. Like, I swallow my pride with a lot of humility there and a lot of gratitude for his persistence and patience with me as I worked through all of my own emotional traumas. and the ways that I've limited my own expression. And I've really had to challenge myself in being willing to like desire big and want big in life and then express that to him, because that also is my love for him that he gets to play with and create the structure and order and direction for our lives. And so as I've continuously, again, let go of those things, underneath all of that is this infinite love and gratitude that I just feel like I need to pour on him in a way that I just didn't access before, with a lot of emotional garbage covering it up. And so I've experienced that it truly is a part of my essence when I want to seek that authentic soul experience.
My next couple of questions is where my curiosity really comes into play. And it might sound a little bit like devil's advocate, but just remember, I'm on everyone's side here.
With that,
So
Swing on the
I'm just like thinking this through because this is such a beautiful dynamic. And I want to share it. And I'm thinking of the skeptics. I'm thinking of the people who are like, that is not for me. That sounds dangerous, both on the male side and the female side. So, one of my first things is like, I believe that choices and the removal of choice and surrendering that to a healthy masculine energy is the ultimate freedom. And as I've started to date again, and as I've been able to like explore, my previous relationship was probably the most dom/sub. I would say it was more on polarity. We didn't quite get to navigate that water, perhaps because of the energy blockages. But I'm a huge component that giving up and like surrendering that into the masculine energy brings a lot of joy. And most women look at me like I have like this crazy idea. So, Dawn, have you experienced that through your clients or maybe through people in your family or your friends? Do they just kind of give you this weird look whenever you share this with them?
You know, I can't think of one experience where I have. Um, it's so unique. And I truly believe that I'm not saying this is for everybody, by no means, but it seems to speak to something in almost every woman. And something that I've learned and I can't ignore anymore is, in my experiences of life, if I hear something and I feel this like big adverse, like, oh my gosh, no reaction, there's something there for me. And so when I've slowly been willing to challenge, what is this opportunity showing me? Because it's mirroring something about me and it has really nothing to do about what that other person is or what the statement is. And so when I'm willing to let myself be challenged and wrestle with anything and everything that was a strong no to me, I have learned that, correct me if I'm wrong here, sir, but I have learned that essentially I was almost wrong about it, if you will, and it actually was for me. And my ego was the one that was saying, that's not safe, that's not familiar, that's not comfortable. And that's where the no was coming from.
what we see
Okay.
and hear more often, and I'd be curious to know how you receive this, Air, but what we hear more often is when we talk to women about choice and surrendering choices and surrendering their preferences, is maybe the initial reaction is, oh, that's a little scary. But the question I always have back is that while I absolutely believe that you are capable of making all of those choices and being in charge and living your life as the one in control. Are you happy? And do you feel free?
This one's being asked to me. Am I happy and do I feel free? So I would say, as far as relationship dynamic, through my personal experiences, I have had 3 significant relationships in my life thus far. So I'm overdue for the marriage at this point. As they say, you get 3 and then you find the one. With that, the first one, I will definitely say I was in control of everything. I was the more educated one. I was the one that was choosing everything, setting the pace of the relationship. And that was when I was in my early 20s. That relationship lasted for about 2.5 years. And I left that relationship purely because I was exhausted of always being in control and in charge. And that is, he was a wonderful human being. His soul was pure. He treated me very nicely. But that just felt so exhausting and so, it made me angry even.
Yeah.
So
And that's why
leaving that relationship.
That's why nice guys don't turn women on. They can be very kind, but it leaves you in that exhausted energy where there's no sexual receptivity.
Yes.
I would bet the sex in that relationship absolutely died after the new relationship energy kind of wore off. Yes.
It definitely did. I would say that even at that time, it was still a very pure relationship for the first part. That was one of those relationships where virginity was lost. So I have to preference that of, in the beginning, it really wasn't there. And then it was introduced and then it tapered off. So just authentic, to that relationship versus my second main relationship. I'm seeing the evolution of discovering what you guys have in my own life and being able to share that with everybody. So the second main relationship lasted for 4 years. And that is the relationship that I would say was more of that 50-50, where he wanted me to pay 50% of the bills. He wanted me to be that powerhouse, go conquer, go build businesses. I built a beautiful company because that's what he wanted, not because of what I wanted. He wanted me to contribute more and he wanted me to do this. So I went and I created this amazing company called Flying with Air. I had 6 retail stores. I was working 90-hour work weeks. And I, again, found myself just exhausted. I never got to go play. I never got to go even rest, which is another feminine quality because it was always go, go, go. And I actually began to resent him as a result. Again, beautiful human being, nothing as far as like did super wrong until sexuality became part of the problem. But again, I just was so angry all the time. I'm like, why do I have to make all of these decisions? Why can't I just be me? Why do I have to taper my emotions? Why can't I be loud? Why can't I dance at 4 a.m.? Like just these weird, lovely, expressive, feminine qualities felt, again, limited. And that's where I hummed a little bit with Dawn when she mentioned it. I was like, I understand. Versus this latest relationship, just to kind of put a bow on it, was probably the most polarized relationship. Again, it wasn't a complete Dom sub, but he was leaning into that masculine energy. And it was very much something from the start. We're going to work through this. This is the type of relationship dynamic we do want. And it is not for everybody. So I'm so glad Don mentioned that too. But I also feel like some of it is for everybody. And that might be where I get controversial. Because while that relationship didn't last in the way that I wanted it to last. I feel like it's more about those energy blockages, maybe the closed heart from the masculine, maybe some emotional limitations from myself. But I do believe that every single relationship can have polarity as part of it. And the more that you kind of take away those poles from each other, the stronger it gets. And that's what I'm hearing from you guys. So
Yeah.
I have one more question for you, Andrew, but it sounds like you're going to add something to that. So go for it.
I'm just going to add something briefly that this is why I teach people in like my coaching work and in our courses that it is incumbent on the masculine to go first in this work, because there's a mutual surrender that happens in these kind of polarized relationship dynamics like dominance and submission. And the surrender in the physical realm, in like the energy of I'm telling Dawn what to do, that Dawn is surrendering in that part of the relationship. But there is a equally balanced surrender that I have to have, which is the surrender in the emotional realm, because it's actually her feelings that lead in the realm of the emotion. She is feeding emotional information to me while I am feeding leadership to her. But because we are human beings first, we live in a physical world. The man has got to be able to hold a container and set structure that allows a woman to feel safe enough to let go and to set that emotion free. Because that's some of the deepest wounding of women that I come across and work with, is this wounding around feeling like their emotions are too much, that they've been taught by the world, by men, that they can't express. And so a man has to be able to be the one to go first, to be strong enough to hold her so she doesn't have to hold herself.
The last question I have, because again, I could talk about this all day long, but I want to be very respectful to your time, and I'm very grateful for you all joining me here today, is one big proponent that I think is an advocate for leaning into polarity for your relationship is the silenced man. And when I say the silenced man, I am thinking of the man that has been in a relationship for, let's say, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, maybe 3 decades. And you see them in public, and he just looks like the life has been drained out of him. And he doesn't feel like his voice is important. He doesn't feel valid. As far as that man, how can he reactivate the energy in his relationship? Or is there a point, Andrew, where you're like, this is kind of your life, that this is your reality? Is that the type of coaching that you guys bring to the table, or would you suggest something different?
If a man has allowed himself to be shut up, if he's closed his mouth just to keep the peace for long enough, it can be very, very difficult to reactivate that relationship. Not impossible, but the longer he's shut up and suppressed speaking up for what it is that he wants and how he wants things to be, the more the couple has learned to relate in a way where essentially he's surrendered the masculine pole to her, and now he is just the emasculated character. He's given over all of the leadership, all of his inherent masculinity to his partner. And to wit, your first and second relationship that you kind of were sharing about earlier are examples of exactly that, where if the man isn't leading, then the woman will. She will step into that space if he vacates it. So nobody silences a man but himself. He's the one who chooses not to speak up. He's going to have to do that at some point, but it is hard. It is damn hard when he has learned essentially to shut himself up to avoid problems, because it feels like if he opens his mouth, there are going to be problems. So
You hit on
go ahead.
you hit on such a valid point right there, and I just want to highlight it, is the woman will step into that space. And as far as masculine energy and feminine energy go together, is the male energy is always looking for that emptiness. That's what drives them to go hunt, to go conquer, to go build. Versus the woman, her energy always wants to create and fill up the space. So that's why that dynamic kind of happens, is he has that shut down. She wants to fill the silence, right? When things get too quiet, ladies love to talk. So I just really love that you honed in on that part. She'll step into it.
Yeah, 100% she'll step into it, and very capably, by the way, even though she will probably end up resenting it and feeling burned out and exhausted, worn out. Decision fatigue is real for feminine women who have been forced to be the deciders and the ones figuring things out.
So I want to kind of tell everybody where to find you all because you guys have figured it out. 15 years is not, nothing. It's very much an accomplishment. So where are you all at in the world, your journey? Do you guys have a client base that you're accepting new clients? Teach me about that, please.
Yeah, so easiest way to find us is through our website, infinitedevotion.com, or on Instagram, we are _infinitedevotion. And we do all sorts of work with both individuals and couples who want to integrate these polarized dynamics into their relationships. So we have different live courses that we teach throughout the year. We do one-on-one mentorship, longer-term mentorship work with individuals and couples. And we're just about to launch a new course that is called Becoming a Dominant Man, which is teaching men the process that I had to go through myself to truly embody solid, healthy, loving, open-hearted dominance.
And then, of course, Don, I don't want to leave you out. Is there anything that you feel led to share just to tie us all up?
Just that if you seek more love and passion and desire in your life, in your relationships, it's so possible if you're willing to do the work to have it. And by work, I mean lots of different things there, but it is, for the woman, it is an emotional journey, and being able to be present with your own experience and seek that inner work, allowing yourself to follow. I love one thing I just want to share here when you were speaking before about the woman filling the space. It truly is possible to feel that energetic penetration from the masculine when you are willing to step out of it. Like, that's where more of that desire and fun and playful energy of these power exchange dynamics, they truly become that turn on in life. And you continuously can play and evolve in all of that. And so if you want it, go for it.
Don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah. Speak up for what you want.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I'll end it on this. For women, I said before, the men have the closed hearts. For women, it's closed wombs. It's the block that happens for women the most is the lack of willingness to allow a man to step into your life and lead you. Now, obviously, this needs to be someone trustworthy. It needs to be somebody that is worthy of being followed. But if you want a man to step into that space, he cannot occupy space that you already have taken over. You have to be willing to step out of it and refuse to go into it.
I couldn't have said that better, Andrew. Thank you. So, with all of that, I want to thank you guys again for coming on the show with us, sharing your journey, your knowledge, your wisdom. And of course, go to infinitedevotion.com if you are curious about this. I'm curious about the dominant male class, and I'm not even a male. I'm just curious about how Andrew is going to approach that. So follow them on Instagram, sign up for their courses, and then, of course, as always, thank you for healing and growing with me today.